Hi everyone, this is Marilyn Serson again. And for this lecture, this is just the second part of our discussion in SCITECH. Okay, so last time we have discussed about what science is and what technology is all about. So from last Monday's discussion, we started out with the definition of technology in which we defined it as the applied science. Okay, so just like in today's society, we now consider, for example, products like the cell phone or the laptop or the computer or even television. We consider these as technology because we use certain knowledge of science to be able to come up with those products. Okay, so even in the olden times, just like in the Stone Age, okay, we also have technology here which is working now. During the primitive age of the early humans, fire is already considered as like a technology. Okay, so how do they come up with fire? So eventually, someone discovered that when you um, put two sticks together, rub them against each other, you will eventually form heat, and then it will eventually form fire. Okay, so during that time, we can consider that as technology. Okay, so although of course we know that during their time, these primitive people would not have realized that friction is the one that is responsible for creating heat. Okay, or in this case, it's the one that creates the fire. But if we will translate that into today's society, wherein we already know about friction, so um, this friction, although they do not have a term for that in those olden days, but right now we can see that that knowledge of science actually helped them to come up with fire. So this is technology in action. And similarly, in the time of the Egyptians, okay, Egyptians are known to produce wines. Okay, so they actually have vineyards with them. And the process of making wine, they use that as the basis. The basis for that is the concept of fermentation. Okay, so when something is fermented, then they can turn that into wine. So for in this case, they have the grape juice that is fermented and that becomes their wine. So during their time. So that's also technology in the olden days. And then we can see here that this is the wine making process. In this diagram, it basically summarizes how we do it in today's times. So we start from harvesting the grapes and then we extract the juice. And usually for extracting the juice, now we already have like machines to do that, like pressing machines. And then these extracted juice is now placed in a fermentation chamber where it is fermented, and then it is pressurized. It undergoes a pressurized tap in where it actually apply a certain amount of pressure to fasten the process of fermentation, and also to somehow filter. Okay, so the some of the parts in the wine. So from the pressure tank, it goes into our filtration tanks, which actually purifies the final product, which is the wine. Okay, now, when all of those sediments have been separated from the fermented juice, or in this case, we now call that as wine, we now put them into barrels. So this is now what happens in diagram in the picture in number 6. Okay, so it now this wine is now placed into their barrels, and these barrels are stored in a certain storage area where they actually let some years pass, okay, before it is like harvested. Okay, so in principle, the longer the wine is aged, the more expensive the wine is. Okay? Because they say that the more aged a wine is, the more it would taste better. Okay, so that is basically what happens there. Then, after the aging process, it will now be placed inside your wine bottles. And of course, this will now be distributed to stores, okay, where it is now, where the wine now lands on our table. Okay, so that's the time that we consume this. Okay, so this is how we do um, the technology of winemaking, okay, and in today's time. And if you notice, the concept of fermentation here, there's what is applied science. The application of pressure on the liquid is also considered science, also with filtration as well. Okay, so just like science, technology is also a body of knowledge and skill. Okay, so the technology, the knowledge here is actually the process, okay, of applying science into um, processes that would allow us to create something out of it, just like technological products. Okay. Now, technology also can control and modify the world, okay, as we know it. A lot of what is happening on the world right now is because of technology. Like, for instance, the reason why we're having online classes is because it's very possible now because of technology. With the advent of the computers, the internet connection, Wi-Fi connection, data science. Okay? So this all allows us to enjoy the benefits of online learning. And then also in terms of medicine, you also have doctors and the researchers, medical researchers, who actually come up with treatments for certain diseases. Before, AIDS cannot be cured. Well, although in today's times it still cannot be cured, but today it can now be managed. So people who get AIDS do not necessarily have to die right away. Some of them, even after being diagnosed with AIDS, they still have like longer lives. They can still experience longer lives through the medications that they're taking. Again, so these medicines are because of science. For instance, tuberculosis before was considered as a deadly disease. Like, if you have tuberculosis, you are already considered dead, just like the cancer of those early times. But now, no one dies of tuberculosis because it can easily be treated. Same thing with cancer. Like before, cancers is like the death sentence for you. But right now, there are so many ways wherein we can battle cancer. So there is a higher survival rate right now because more and more technologies are being discovered for to cure cancer. For instance, they have operations, they have chemotherapy, they have radiation therapy. So all of these are all related to technology, and these are all products of technology. And then when it comes to like coming up with, for instance, beauty products. Okay, so beauty products are also products of technology as well, health and wellness. Even with our food, before they cannot preserve food. So, like if you cook now, just in a matter of hours, it will become spoiled. But right now, we do have a lot of means to make sure that our food stays fresh longer, okay? Just like the refrigerators, right? So before, they do not have refrigerators. Now we can have this luxury of having our food stay fresh longer because of the refrigerator. Okay, and also we have also come up with different, let's say, preservatives that we come up to make sure that our food stays fresh longer. So, for example, we have canned goods, canned products, dogs, for example, and hams. Okay, so those are products of technology as well because the techniques that they use are all based on science. Then I've mentioned also before that technology is a total societal enterprise. Okay, so everything that we see in our society right now is actually driven by technology. Okay, so we can see that in medicines, we can see that in um, information technology, we can see that in our health system, okay, and in a lot of aspects in our society. So, how do we actually define society? So, society is a group of people with common interests, traditions, purpose, and or activity. Okay, so we can somehow like relate society into, let's say, a nation. Okay, so if we want to express something on a larger scale, but we call that as a society. Okay, so in here is a technology is basically driven by the society. So if we will look at this diagram here. We can see here that society has a lot of demands. Okay, so with these demands, science responds by providing us with something, some knowledge, and this knowledge that science provides is actually converted into technology. So it is fed into technology. And at the same time, if the technology is limited, now it's asking for more knowledge. And so it goes back to science. Like this is where a lot of research are going on. So we typically find something that is supposed to solve a certain problem that is posed by society. And then we also know that technology is what makes life easier. So it gives the society an opportunity to have a better life. And the society also benefits from technology. Okay, so you can see here like there's an interrelationship between society, technology, and science. So technology is the use of or application of scientific knowledge for a specific goal or a purpose. Let's just take a look at the COVID-19 pandemic. So during the pandemic, we're all aware that science was already in place when it already discovered the virus. Okay, now, where did the technology take place? We can see that in a lot of aspects. But first, we can primarily see that in the way that the vaccines were devised, okay, where the vaccines were formulated. Because now, knowing the science of how the virus works and what makes it active or what makes it inactive, this knowledge of biological science or molecular science in this particular case is what the researchers have used, the medical technologists and the medical researchers, to come up with a vaccine for the virus. Okay, so basically now that application of science is what we call as technology. And then you can also see technology taking into place when it comes to information technology, right? Because we can see a lot of information that is being exchanged between countries to countries. COVID became like a matter for every nation. So it's not in the Philippines alone, it's not on a certain country alone, but it affects the entire world. Like you can see figures. For instance, the statistics that are related to COVID, like the number of deaths, the number of people who are infected, the number of the people who recovered. You don't only see that in the data provided by DOH. You can also see that from the data that is presented worldwide, and you can easily access that information through the internet, right? So these information technology, um, this information technology means were the reasons why we were able to keep track of the activity of the COVID-19 virus. And that is also what helped us survive that pandemic for like the past 2 to 3 years. So right now we are slowly going back to the normal, wherein we can probably say that COVID-19 is still here, but it's no longer considered as a pandemic because a lot of people already have been vaccinated. A lot of people have already have immunity from the disease. Okay. Now let's look at the interrelationship of science, technology, and society. So science attempts to provide explanation to everything. Everything, design laws of nature, and produce knowledge. Now, on the other hand, technology is the application of scientific knowledge in a form of service, object, processes, and devices. So you can see that in our discussions previously. Okay, so again, science is the one that provides the reason. It provides the explanation. It provides the basic principle, okay, to be used to come up with something that we can create. Okay, so that act of creation out of the science principles is what we call as technology. And technology can give us not just products, but it can also give us processes and other things that we can consider as an output of science. Now, society, like what you said, is the is defined as a group of people in a specific place and time and are linked by common goals and interests. So society consumes both technology and science. The demand to update, tailor fit, and modify science and technology is always towards the aim to improve human life and society. So the reason why we're getting more and more developments, for instance, in the field of information technology. Let's take the example of internet connections. So before, we don't really have internet. Okay, so the internet before were just based on having cables. Like if you have a cable connection, like a DSL connection, you can consider that as a fast service internet. But right now, we do have an internet that is based on satellites. Okay, the one that has been advertised by Elon Musk. I just forgot the name. So he has this service, internet service. I think that's Starlink, if I'm not mistaken. Now, a lot of bloggers who are doing blogging ships, okay, like that, or those who are showing provincial life, or like this blogger who blogs from his jeepney that has been turned into like a camper van. Okay, so they use Starlink. So Starlink is a type of internet connection that is based on a satellite. Okay, so you can imagine that you actually don't have any interruption in the internet connection at all. So basically, because it depends on the satellite, and we know that on Earth, there's always a satellite connection. And with that, there's no way that this person or a person who is using Starlink would even have any problems with the internet because it's always there. Even if they go to the remotest part of the world, they will always have internet connection. It's a lot more pricey compared to like the regular internet. But if you're the type who doesn't want to have interruptions in the internet connection, you might as well get a Starlink. Okay, so that technology was developed because of the demand of our society to have faster internet connections. And with everything that's been going on, especially with the advent of the pandemic, we were suddenly pushed into a scenario wherein we need to move everything into cyberspace. Like people who used to work in offices before, and now they're working remotely using their computers at home and internet connection. And same thing with the way that we study right now, right? Before we don't have asynchronous classes, before we don't have like online classes. But because of the pandemic, it was like a demand of the society to come up with ways for us to adapt, for us to still continue studying, for us not to let the whole world stop just because of the virus. And that is what have driven technology into what it has been doing today. Okay, so as you can see, there's a strong link between science, technology, and society. Okay, so the emergence of STS as a new field of study, you would never see STS as a subject in the previous curricula, probably when your parents were still studying college, or like if your ate or your kuyas have been studying in college before, they do not have STS subjects. So this is primarily a new subject. So this tracks the history of the disciplines, the dynamics of science as a social institution, and the philosophical basis for scientific knowledge. It basically wants us to have like a new appreciation for science and technology, and for us to like develop this certain kind of interest that science and technology do shape our society. So this is like a very short diagram of what has been happening with the emergence of STS as a new field of study. So it came from the structure of scientific revolutions, which has been proposed by Thomas Kuhn in 1962. So he is the primary guy who is responsible for introducing science and technology to the world. And then new approaches and historical science study and historical and social studies of science began also in the following years. And then UP Diliman started offering STS to its students. So this is like the first university that came up with the program for STS. So UP Diliman required STS for all their undergraduate studies. So whatever your course is, there's always an STS subject that you would take. So Chad eventually followed this pattern of UP Diliman, and it included SCS in its revised list of GE courses in 2013. So they have seen the positive effect on UP Diliman, so now they have also tried to do that and replicated that with other universities in the entire country as well. So wherever university you go, whatever college you study, you will always get the subject. So that's basically it. Okay, so there's no getting away with this subject. Okay, so now what is the reason why we're teaching science and technology? Okay, so science, technology, and society, or in some cases they also call this a SCITECH, is an interdisciplinary field of study that seeks to explore and understand how science and technology influence the society. And then it also concerns new modern values. It also concerns how modern values affect and impact science and technology. Of course, our values are evolving. Okay, so as our values evolve, which is often dictated by society, it also creates a certain effect on science and technology. Like SciTech will focus on science and technology in the society, and this course will also examine the social implication of both science and technology in human society. Well, we do know that in everything, there's always like a good side and a bad side. So it's not always the science and technology will always give you the best, although, of course, let's not deny it that it is one of the primary reasons why we're having a good life today. But of course, it's also one of the reasons why we have suffered a lot of, sufferings in the world or lots of pain, just like I've said before, the Hiroshima bombing, that is a classic example of science and technology that has gone out of hand. You also have I would probably call this as well like a certain disaster of science and technology. Probably COVID-19 pandemic, because there have been, although I'm not sure whether this is true or not, but there have been some reports that the COVID-19 virus is actually engineered. Now, if it is true, that is, of course, pretty scary, because that means, science and technology can be used into something that can also destroy humanity. Like we can always come up with viruses, or like we can come up with diseases that would probably wipe out the entire, human population. And that's pretty scary. So science and technology, just like in any other things, if this one falls into the wrong hands, it will also be the reason why life on Earth could be put to an end. So learning and understanding SciTech concepts is important to students because, number one, it prepares them to use science for improving their own lives and be able to better understand and cope with an increasingly technological society. So let's face it, today's society is no longer science and technology is no longer just something that we read from the textbook, but it is something that we actually use today. So we see that lots of times. So it also enables students to progress through life, especially in dealing with SciTech issues in a very responsible manner. And it helps in identifying a body of knowledge that would enable them to deal with STS issues. And it helps acquiring knowledge and understanding about career opportunities in the field. So before, data scientists did not exist, but right now it's one of the most in-demand jobs that we have. Like, for instance, the computer programmers. Like, although we have heard of that before, in our times, computer programmers are not that in demand, but today, you can see them everywhere, and they're the ones who get the highest salaries in today's society. So, just the job opportunities that are also available for science and technology professionals are also, we're getting a lot of demands for that.